This is the 2022 Dodge Charger RT, and I'm going to show you everything you need to know about this car. Let's go ahead and start under this hood, where you'll find a Hemi V8. This is a 5.7 liter V8 that makes 370 horsepower and 395 pound-feet of torque. If you step up to the Scat Pack, you get 485 horsepower. However, this thing might surprise you. So Dodge claims a 0 to 60 time of just 5 seconds in this car. Let's test it. Now, I must say, I am a huge fan of how the Chargers look. I think they look better than Challengers, in my opinion. You get a 2-level grille setup, these mean-looking headlights, and a nice vent right on your hood. Now, on the side of this car, you get this nice Hemi badge to let everyone know you're not in a V6, and you also got these massive 20-inch wheels. Now, as for brakes, you only get 2 piston brakes in the front, and the RT does not come standard with Brembos, whereas the Scat Pack does. Now, in the back of the RT, you'll find also 20-inch wheels, but these tires are only 245 in width, and this car can struggle with traction in first gear. As for the brakes in the back, if you don't option for the upgraded package with your wheels and brakes, you get 1 piston brakes in the back. Let's do a 60 to 0 test. Ready, set, go. Now, in the back of this car is where things get good again. You have a nice vent to help all that air flow through the wheel well. You have a dual tip exhaust, which, let's stop there and take a listen to how this thing sounds. Now, also in the back of the Charger, I think these backs look really good. Whenever I see these taillights, I think I'm either getting robbed or I'm getting pulled over. You also get a nice spoiler up here, an RT badge, and that's about it. But let's check out this interior. First of all, I will say the inside of these cars are surprisingly nice. Right when you open up the door, you have some decent materials on the door panel. It's not over the top, but acceptable. And right when you take a seat in this car, you're sitting in some big, thick seats. I will say though, this is something I could take on like a 3-hour road trip, no problem. And the steering wheel in here is pretty massive. It makes you feel like you're driving an SUV, which considering this car weighs 4,400 pounds, you almost are. Now, right when you turn this car on and start it up, I think the gauge cluster looks really, really good. You have a digital speedometer, you have an analog speedometer, and an RPM gauge that revs up to 5,700 RPM. Now, right in the center console here, you have your stick to go from park, reverse, neutral, drive, and you can also switch to manual mode by pushing it or pulling it, and that'll shift gears for you. Also, you have 2 cup holders and a nice storage space with USB ports, and not to mention this little rubber compartment, which looks like storage, but if you actually pull this thing up, you realize that's where people steal this car. Right under that little plastic thing is your neutral strap, and thieves will hop in this car, open that up, pull the neutral strap, push it down the road, and easily be able to start your car. Now, right above your center console, you have a cluster of buttons, but it's pretty manageable. First of all, you have a sport mode, which doesn't actually really do much. All you get is a little green checkered flag that pops up in your gauge cluster, and it makes the throttle a lot more responsive. Now, right next to the sport button, there's a button that says Super Track Pack, which sounds pretty interesting. If you press that, it takes you to your individually configurable drive modes, where you're able to configure your engine and transmission, your paddle shifters, your traction control, and your steering feel. But here's where things get good. Not only do you get to do that, but you also have a button right below there where you can actually launch this car up to 3,000 RPM. So let's do a 3,000 RPM launch. Hit the brake and apply throttle. 3, 2, 1. Yep, that's Chargers for you. Now, better yet, if you click apps in this infotainment system, there's something called performance pages. And once again, this is a cool feature. One complaint is that it takes like 30 seconds to load. But once it pulls up and you go to your home screen, you're actually able to see a live horsepower reading, your current gear, and you can even add widgets to get live readings on your car. Right below the home button is a timers button. Now, if you click that, you're able to see all of your performance timers, 60 feet, 330 feet. I don't know why they would do 330. Now, right below the timers button is a gauge button. If you click that, you're able to see your oil temp, oil pressure, coolant temp, and battery voltage. Boring. So below that, you get your G-force meter, where you're actually able to see how many G's you're experiencing at any given moment. And on the right-hand side of that screen, you can actually see your peak G-forces, so it kind of makes you want to beat your past record. Now, if you click the engine button, you get even more live performance metrics, where you're able to see your horsepower and your torque and your oil pressure, and it's this very cool sort of circular graph or chart layout, which I really like. And there's one more button, the dyno button. This is basically basically a dyno graph that shows you the history of your car's performance in terms of how much horsepower you're using at any given moment, as well as the history of how much you've revved this car up. Unfortunately, this car will only record 120 seconds of history, so if you're buying this car used and want to know what the previous owner did with it, this screen won't tell you that. Now, how about the back seats? Let's check it out. So I am very impressed with how roomy the back seats of these cars are. It is actually better than the Challenger, and I could sit back here for hours if I needed to. Right in the center console in the back of the car, you have 2 air vents and you have 2 USB ports. And if you pull on this little tab right here, you have access to cup holders. But there's not a lot of amenities back here, and that's it. At least it's comfortable. Hey, how about the cornering though? Let's push this in some corners and see how it does. Well, road's a tad bit wet. Let's see. Here we go. Oh man, that was a little suspicious. Question for you, would you spend $40,000 to $50,000 getting a new 2022 Dodge Charger RT? That seems a little much to me when you can buy a used Scat Pack for that price. But this car does have a lot to offer and it's pretty cool. Thanks for watching.